Hello, and thanks for joining me for Diversity Matters, a podcast exploring issues related to the media and inclusion. In this episode, we're finding out about a project that's supporting local and independent media in Europe. It's creating a lot of interest, and not just from European journalists and organizations. As we'll find out, it's not about just funding more stories. It's about finding new and innovative ways to build resilience and tackle head-on some of the challenges the media is facing. I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague, Josh LaPorte, who is a project manager at Media Diversity Institute Global. I'll let Josh explain more about the overall state of local and independent media, and of course, about the project. Josh, thanks for joining me for this Diversity Matters. It's great to talk to you about what is a big issue, has been a big issue for a very long time around the world, not just Europe, which is the survival or the health of local and independent media. Big problem around the world, as I said. Local newspapers closing everywhere, 130 in the US alone last year. They've lost 40% of their local media. Tens of millions without local coverage. And that's just America. I mean, we're seeing the same thing in Europe. I'm sitting in Australia, seeing headlines in Australia, New Zealand. It's happening everywhere. You work in Europe. You talk to a lot of NGOs, media, and other kind of professionals in the field. What are they telling you? Where are their concerns?
Yeah, I mean, the current concerns are widespread. I mean, they go from top to bottom, from every imaginary situation you can imagine, from the revenue side, from the safety side, from the legislative side, from the regulatory side, from the competition side. I mean, these are, let's say there's always been elements of these always in media, but not on the steroids level that all of them are right now that's happening. There's never been, at least in my lifetime, a crisis in media freedom and press freedom and freedom of speech than what's going on at the same time. It's also in the context of digitalization, and that has obviously fast forwarded all of these problems. But in places where authoritarian leaders are taking over, in history, they always want to control the written word, free speech. Now they have many more interesting and better tools to do it. So we're dealing with old problems in a very digital environment.
I guess the key question everybody wants is what's being done or what needs to be done to tackle these problems head on and save local and independent media, because as so many people have pointed out, it's fundamental to democracy. It's fundamental to making sure people have their rights, making sure that, people can prosper, and even the economy. There's economists have linked it to economic prosperity. So if you look at the EU or the European scene, which you're involved in, what else needs to be done? Is there a sense of urgency now to support and bolster local and independent media? And I know you're doing exactly that on one of your projects, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but let's just get the bigger picture for now.
No, there is. And I mean, and our project is part of that very small part, well, an important part. But yeah, it's part of that overall effort that's going on. And it's increasing, at least inside of Europe, especially in light of what's been happening in the Trump administration in the U.S. with the absolute disregard and attacking media, which is kind of an unheard of thing in the United States until recently. But the EU is aware of this. They know that it's an important part of, as you say, even on the economic level, to have proper information going into consumers' hands, so they know how to actually live their lives, know what's happening, to have that information. There's a lot of, let's say, activity at the educative levels from civil society, really focusing on this problem, not just on the safety issues around, keeping journalists safe and making sure that there's no impunity for attackers of media workers, et cetera, on that side. But then there's this whole other side on protecting the media legislatively. So you have different things like the European Media Freedom Act that have come out that really put, the protection of media front and center on the legal sense, trying to stop frivolous lawsuits against the media. You also have the Digital Services Act, which attempts to kind of put some rules and conditions around how the platforms should operate and how technically everyone should have equal access to those platforms. And there's a whole other series of rules around hate speech and different things on this. So it's really front and center in the European Union and the member states, not all the member states. We still have states in the EU like Hungary that never sign up for these things, but they have to implement them at some point. They also have a whole other section on competition policy to making sure that the media are actually competing properly. There's an even playing field. That also goes for advertising, that the media companies should have equal access to advertising and it should not be politically influenced like it is in Hungary. They all know these problems are very important. They all know that it's important for a functioning society, a functioning civil society, and a functioning economy. And depending where the world goes in the next years, in a security sense, you have to have proper information getting to its citizens, especially with developments in the world on the security side of things. Just watching the war in Ukraine, you can see how information and disinformation is being utilized as a weapon of war. So I think that's partly in their minds as well. The budgets are going to go up in the next 7-year budget, close to 1 billion. So aid and assistance to independent media is going to be doubled.
But is there a sense this is going to actually make a real difference for local media, and how long to get there? Right. Is it something we're going to see quickly, or is it a longer term thing, do you think?
I mean, in my experience, the local media, community media, hyper local media, this is always something kind of an afterthought, sadly. And especially now with digitalization, there's really no business plan that's out there that's really functioning properly for local media. I mean, this is one of the biggest problems. There's problems with content production. There's problems with budgets. There's problems with retention of staff. You have a lot of young journalists that maybe do a little bit, and they go to the big cities, they go to the big media. Local media is always seen as basically kind of stepping stone. It's also just to kind of focus on the unique issues that confront local media. It's also very personal medium, which in some ways is good. I mean, that's where you get your local news, what's going on. You kind of trust it more because it's so localized. Those are all the pluses. But at the same time, it also makes for a media where if you find out some corruption on a local judge, I mean, you're probably going to have real problems in your community. It makes doing the actual hard work of local journalism difficult. It makes advertisers not want to deal with you. So they have these kind of unique situations where they're under-resourced, they're understaffed, yet this is the information that people really need, like on a daily basis, to know what's going on, like in their police stations, in their courthouses, or even like when people are getting together, if there's events or activities. So, I mean, there are some, innovative ways that are happening. I do think that there is more attention now from the donors because they understand this important point about what we call now news deserts, where there's literally big chunks, big swaths of territory where people live, mostly in rural communities, where they have absolutely no access to information, especially older people that don't really go online, et cetera. And even if they go online, so much media has been nationalized. It's hard to actually get local views of anything. Everything kind of plays out at a national level now.
This is a good opportunity now to talk about the project you're involved with, because it's all about supporting local and independent media across Europe. It's called LIMENet. So tell us how you're going to do that. How are you going to achieve that goal to really offer that support that local media needs, as you've just explained to us?
Yeah, I mean, it's local innovation in news in Europe network. So it is focused on local news. It's focused on innovation. It's focused on sharing best practices at the local level. And this has to do with different kinds of content production, reaching out to new communities that are overlooked, marginalized communities, underserved communities. And there's incentives for that through granting programs, also mentoring programs, and also the sharing of the best practices through a repository that we're putting together. It's in 6 countries, so it does span most of Europe. We're in Lithuania, Poland, Hungary, Serbia, Belgium, We were doing some work in Georgia. It's very difficult there these days. The countries were picked to kind of look at best practices in different regions of Europe, but also especially in places where it is tough already for local media and any media to thrive, like in places like Hungary. And, they've been under the thumb for so long from Orban. Some pretty creative and innovative solutions have come out of Hungary due to this at the local level as well. So, I mean, we got over 150 applications for this last grant call. We're providing over 700,000 euros for these grant programs. Most grants are about 20,000 euros. And with that, some pretty creative and innovative ideas have come in on how to make local media flourish and thrive and to try new things and definitely to share best practices.
You mentioned innovation a couple of times there, and I'm really curious what sort of innovation. I think people listening will go, okay, what are you talking about? What are the examples? What's groundbreaking in some of these sort of innovations and ideas and that you're supporting?
I mean, innovation is a catchphrase for, something new, something creative. It doesn't always have to be digitally linked, but it often does have to do with digitalization, using new digital and technical tools to reach new audiences, new ways of using AI in content production. But it also means even something like I was saying, there's a real problem with retention of staff. One of our programs is creating a very strong apprenticeship program for journalism students to get them interested in working there. And it seems really basic, but this is one of the biggest problems they have is losing staff, finding staff, in fact. So I've found that these days to actually be an innovative approach to make sure that you have young people already integrated. And also that's part of their youth strategy. How do we get young audiences? What are they interested in? So it's twofold. It's also staffing, but it's also this is what young people, how they're consuming news these days. It's good to have some young people around actually showing us, the best ways to do that. So that was one of the bigger features of our granting was this focus on reaching new audiences, especially younger audiences. And in many cases, different, like new audiences that are underserved, whether it's people with disabilities, the LGBTQ community, minorities in each country that are vastly underserved, and trying to find new ways of doing that. Some include public events, community meetings. So actually, bringing people face to face to discuss stories and issues that are affecting their communities. So yeah, there was a big wide variety of new ways that we've seen across each country. So we were really impressed. It was really hard to make the decision because we could only fund between 5 and 6 projects in each country. And in some countries, like even in Serbia, I think we got nearly 50 applications. So I made everybody's work a little bit trickier, but we had great juries in each country. So that made the job much easier. Yeah.
I know we've talked about the LIMENet project before quite a few times, actually, because we work together. But what I find really interesting about it is supporting local media is not just supporting stories, the production of stories or investigations. Right. Of course it is in some cases, but it's so much more. And you've just described that. It's how to reach new audiences, how to keep staff. There's so many elements to supporting the local media, particularly. So do you have any other examples or sort of what's the mix of how much are you investing in stories? Is there still a need to support stories, actually, or investigations, or is most of it more the sort of structural support that's needed more across Europe?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I mean, what I would say was actually even a further example of innovation is we are supporting a number of content production projects. The content production has to have a viability message attached to it. Like, how is this, let's say, new series you want to do? How is that hooked back to your business planning and your strategy? How does that work to bring new audiences? How are you using that to collaborate with other media, with other institutions, with local communities, local NGOs? So it couldn't just be, oh, we want to do this investigation on this terrible company. I mean, it had to be linked back to their overall strategy, business planning, things like that. So the jury just didn't look at, oh, that sounds like a great story. Well, there had to be a justification. And that was in the application. So it was made pretty clear, So.
Sounds like there's some pretty exciting projects as part of this LIMENet overarching project. How long before we see the results? What's the timeline on it? And how much excitement is there for this kind of work?
Some of the projects are already starting. They have up to 7 months. So we are expecting some outcomes, outputs, results, impacts, all those words, I would say by the springtime. So by then, in each country, we're also going to be having get-togethers of sub-grantees and other media to talk about best practices. So we really intend to share the learning from this project, so we can hear and see. Because whether a small community radio station in Serbia or a local newspaper in Belgium, I mean, you're in many ways you're dealing with the same things. So there's a lot you have in common than that you don't. So it's really important that we get those best practices out there. So we're going to be learning from all the projects.
I know I just asked about how much excitement there is about that. Maybe I should rephrase. How much interest do you think there's going to be? Like you were talking about the project to retain staff, young people into local journalism. So that, again, you're talking about lessons learned. That could be a very interesting project, because if it all goes to plan, that might be a nice model other people would be very interested in sort of looking at for their own organizations. And I'm sure there's quite a few different things like that. So next year is going to be quite interesting to see how everybody comes up with ideas that will be shared, as you said, across Europe and elsewhere, probably broader, to try to really boost and strengthen local media. Are you really confident and optimistic that you're really going to have a big impact with this project?
Yeah, I think another component of it that we haven't talked too much about is that we also have some technical assistance funding that goes for mentoring, coaching. So when we do see, some really great results bubble up, there will be a way to share them. And in fact, all grantees have access to outside technical expertise. So if there's something they're having difficulty with, something they need a little bit of extra push, we can actually help them with experts that are already doing great stuff in the field. That's another way of sharing best practices too, from other places that are already doing it, or, oh, how did they do that so well? Who's doing that over there? And usually if they're not in direct competition, and usually with local media, they're not, people are willing to share their best practices. They're very willing to share what they learned, what didn't work, and what worked. And we hope to definitely, inspire through that process as well.
I think one thing that I found really interesting, and you mentioned it earlier, is the number of submissions. How many journalists and organizations applied for the support that your project is offering? And another interesting thing I could see on social media popping up is people from Africa saying, we need this too.
Okay.
It wasn't just this sort of need that was coming from Europe. There was like interest elsewhere. People really caught, onto this project and the idea. And it seems that there's a huge need for it.
This project came at the right time. I mean, it's in some way it's a bit edgy and ahead of its time. And, I can think of very few projects that truly focused on this level to this extent across the EU. And of course, obviously, it's creative and inventive and new and edgy because it's not happening in a lot of places, like in sub-Saharan Africa or developing countries in Southeast Asia. In the US, there's been more attention to this problem. They know it's there, the news deserts. I'm not sure how much funding is going in to stop it. But yeah, I'm not surprised it was gaining attention from all different parts of the world. So.
I guess we could finish on a note. How optimistic are you for the future of local and independent media in Europe? Are you feeling a little bit more reassured now?
I am. I mean, you have to have it. Why wait till the breaking point where suddenly it becomes obvious that, so many people will be underserved, not participating in society, not understanding what's going on in their own communities. I mean, at some point, there will be a breaking point, and we don't want that to happen, because when the breaking point happens, I mean, then the solutions are going to be much harder, much deeper, there'll have to be government intervention, different, even stronger regulatory changes. So I think this is a way to, I'm not saying to stem the flow of what's happening. I mean, we have to have local media. You have to have community media. You need that outreach to all citizens in the country. You shouldn't be living in a city to know what's going on where you're living. And that's why I'm optimistic. So I think if we get some shining examples out of this, I don't think every project's going to be a great shiny success. But if we get one or two per country, I think this is it's a real mark of success and something that has to be shared. And maybe renewed and we go into other countries. I actually had many requests coming from Slovakia, Czech Republic, other parts of Southeast Europe. Like, when is LimeNet coming to our town? When is it going to come over our borders? Because we would like something like this. So maybe even other donors are looking at it and thinking, oh, this actually is an interesting idea how this is happening. So, there could be more donor interest as well, especially as we get some, like I said, some really good examples from the countries we're working in.
Yeah, and you said something really interesting there. I mean, great summary of the project and your optimism, but you also said not every project might be this amazing success, but actually some of them are experiments to try something. And that's equally as important, right? It's not about having a success or not. It's about trying something to add to that knowledge you were talking about so that people can keep finding solutions to these very deep and serious problems.
Yeah, I mean, these aren't supposed to be survival funds. I mean, it is getting much harder now with USAID backing out of places like Serbia, Poland, and Hungary. This is possibly filling some of the gap for that. This is a place where, okay, here's some funding. Try something new. Go out, take a chance, take a risk. We look very closely at the budgets. We did not want, for example, an over heavy human resources element. That had to be a part of it, of course, but we wanted to see on the technical side, on the outreach side, what was actually going on, in terms of how the project was going to be. We just don't want to pay a couple editors their full salaries for 7 months and nothing else. So that was also an important element. And we got that message across as well, because this is the moment, this is the chance that you can do this. You're not, like I said, none of them are really in survival mode. I mean, they're all not, breaking profits that well, et cetera. But I mean, the funding is there to do specifically something like you just said. It is a chance to go out and try something new and to see if it works, and then to share it.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the results next year and learning on the way what's been happening and what the different teams that have part of this project are producing and trying. Josh, thank you so much for joining me to explain the situation with local and community independent media across Europe, but also the LIMENet project, because it is, as you said, one of the elements trying to help support and secure a future with some innovation, a big word to take away from our discussion, with innovation, creative and some risk-taking to see how they can change that dynamic. I guess a final thought for anybody listening going, how do I find out more about this project? Where are you going to send them? Where are they going to go and find out more and follow what you're doing?
Yeah, I think the best spot is still going to the Media Diversity Institute's homepage, and you'll see information about the program there. Lots of links to our partners and other things that have been going on. And then also Media Diversity Institute's social channels, a lot of posts that you've helped me make on LinkedIn and Instagram. Those were very popular.
Good luck to all the applicants and, of course, you and the other organisers of the project. We'll look forward to hearing some updates and some more information as it comes in. We're waiting to see the results.
Super. Great, Tanya. It was really good to talk to you about this topic.
My thanks again to Josh. Do visit our website or keep across our social media, as Josh recommends, if you want to find out more about LimeNet. Thank you for joining me, Tanya Sakzewski, for this episode of Diversity Matters, brought to you by Media Diversity Institute. I look forward to your company again. Take care.